I cheated on my husband with his best friend, and it all started with a bracelet, a thin silver chain with a pendant that jingled gently on my wrist. Catching the porch light as I smiled at my husband's friend. Why did I let his gaze linger when I knew I was married? I'm not proud of this, but I need to tell you just once before it breaks me. Call me Sarah if you want, but this story is about me. My husband Ben and his friend Luke, who saw something in me I couldn't hide. It started 4 months ago at a barbecue in our backyard, all smoky grills and summer heat. Ben was flipping burgers. His apron stained his laugh, loud and steady. The anchor of our 10-year marriage, Luke, his college buddy, was new in town, crashing at our place while he settled in. He was easygoing with a quick smile and eyes that seemed to see too much. Nice bracelet, Sarah, he said that night, leaning against the porch railing, his voice low like a secret. I touched the charm, a tiny star Ben gave me years ago, and smiled, but my stomach flipped. Why did his attention feel like a spark I couldn't douse? I brushed it off as friendliness. Luke was just charming, right? Ben trusted him, always clapping his shoulder, saying Luke's family. But the moments piled up. He'd linger when I washed dishes, his arm brushing mine as he grabbed a towel. You make this place feel like home, he'd say, his tone too warm. Too close, I'd laugh, my bracelet jingling, and change the subject. But my cheeks burned. One evening as I set out drinks, I caught him watching me from the couch, the TV's glow flickering across his face. You need help, Sarah? He asked, his smile slow. I'm good, I said, my voice shaky. But my heart was racing. That night I lay beside Ben, his snore soft, the ceiling fan humming above. I slipped off my bracelet and set it on the nightstand, promising myself I'd keep things light normal. But the next morning, Ben mentioned a game night with Luke and some friends. It'll be fun, babe, he said, kissing my forehead. Luke was already in the kitchen pouring coffee, and when he looked at me, his eyes held a question I wasn't ready to answer. Why did I feel like I was already slipping? The game night was days away, but Luke's presence in our house was like a low hum I couldn't tune out. My bracelet stayed on my wrist, its star charm catching light every time I moved, a reminder of that porch moment when Luke's eyes found me. I loved Ben, his steady hands, the way he'd hum while fixing the sink, but Luke's attention was waking something in me, something reckless I didn't trust. Why was I letting a look unravel me when I had everything I needed? That Wednesday I was in the garage sorting paint cans for a project, the air thick with dust and the faint tang of turpentine. Ben was at work, the house quiet except for the occasional creak of the floorboards. I didn't hear Luke until he was there leaning against the workbench, a soda in hand. You're always busy, Sarah, he said, his voice warm, teasing, but with an edge that made my skin prickle. I straightened, brushing dust off my jeans, my bracelet jingling softly. Just keeping things in order, I said, avoiding his eyes. But my voice sounded thin, like I was trying too hard. He stepped closer, setting his soda down with a soft clink, and picked up a paint roller, twirling it like a kid. You don't have to do everything alone, he said, his gaze steady, locking onto mine. The garage felt smaller, the fluorescent light harsh above us, and I gripped a paint can, its metal cool under my fingers, to ground myself. Ben's lucky, he added softer now, like he was testing the air between us. He doesn't deserve you working this hard. My breath caught, and I wanted to laugh it off, to tell him to stop, but my throat tightened. I didn't mean to let him get this close, but I didn't push him away either. Before I could respond, he reached past me for another can, his arm brushing mine, deliberate but light, like a spark that didn't quite catch. The contact sent a jolt through me, and I stepped back, my bracelet catching on my sleeve. I should check on dinner, I mumbled, turning toward the door, but he called after me, his voice low. You're more than just Ben's wife, Sarah, you know that, right? I froze, my hand on the doorknob, my heart pounding. I didn't answer, just slipped inside the kitchen's warmth, a stark contrast to the garage's chill. Ben came home an hour later, dropping his keys on the counter with a familiar jangle. Smells good in here, he said, kissing my cheek. Oblivious to the storm in my chest, I smiled, stirring the soup, but Luke's words echoed, and my bracelet felt heavier, like it was pulling me somewhere I shouldn't go. As I set the table, my phone buzzed. A text from Luke meant what I said. My finger hovered over the screen, and I hated myself for not deleting it right away. What was I letting him start? Game night arrived, filling our living room with laughter and the clatter of board game pieces. but I couldn't shake the weight of Luke's text. My bracelet jangled on my wrist, its star charm catching the glow of the table lamp. A quiet echo of that moment in the garage. Ben was in his element, joking with friends, his arm slung over my shoulder, but every time Luke's eyes met mine, my stomach twisted with a mix of guilt and something I didn't want to name. Why was I letting this pull me when I knew it could unravel everything I'd built with Ben? The room was warm, the air thick with the scent of popcorn and beer. I busied myself refilling bowls, dodging Luke's gaze. As he sat across from me rolling dice, with a grin that felt too personal, our friend Mia, always the life of the party, was there, her loud laugh cutting through the chatter as she teased Ben about his losing streak. Sarah, how do you put up with this guy? She said, winking at me, her energy a bright distraction. I forced a smile, my fingers brushing the bracelet, and handed her a drink, grateful for her oblivious cheer. But Luke's presence was a current pulling my attention, no matter how hard I tried to stay anchored. As the night wore on, the group got rowdier, and Ben suggested a team game. Sarah, you're with Luke, he said, oblivious, pairing us up. My heart sank, but I nodded, sliding into the seat beside Luke, the couch cushions dipping under us. His knee brushed mine under the table, a fleeting touch that sent heat up my spine. We've got this, Sarah, he said, his voice low, meant just for me, and I felt the room shrink, the laughter fading to a distant hum. I focused on the game board. The plastic pieces slick under my fingers, but his closeness was overwhelming. Like a song I couldn't stop hearing. During a break, I escaped to the kitchen to grab more snacks, the cool tile grounding me as I opened the fridge. Luke followed, leaning against the counter, his shadow falling over me in the dim light of dusk, filtering through the window. You're avoiding me, he said, his tone half teasing, half serious, his eyes searching mine. I shut the fridge, clutching a bag of chips, my bracelet catching the light. I married Luke. I said, my voice sharper than I meant, but it wavered, betraying me. He stepped closer, his hand grazing my arm, light but deliberate. I know, he said, softer now, but I see you, Sarah, the real you. My breath hitched, and for a moment I didn't move, the chips crinkling in my grip. Mia's laugh burst from the living room, snapping me back, and I pulled away, my heart racing. This can't happen, I said, but my voice was weak, and he didn't back off. I didn't mean to let it feel this alive. But I didn't stop him either. As I turned to leave, he said, meet me later, please. The words hung in the air, and I heard Ben call my name from the other room, cheerful, unaware. What was Luke asking me to risk? Luke's words in the kitchen followed me like a shadow, his plea, meet me later, please, ringing in my ears. As I rejoined the game night, my bracelet felt like a tether, its star charm glinting under the living room lamp, pulling me back to that moment when his hand grazed my arm. I sat next to Ben, his warmth familiar, but my mind was elsewhere, tangled in a longing I couldn't justify. Why was I letting Luke's attention chip away at my marriage when Ben's love was the safest thing I'd ever known? The guilt was a sharp ache burrowing deeper every time I caught Luke's glance. The game wrapped up, and our friends trickled out, Mia's laughter echoing as she hugged me goodbye. You throw the best night, Sarah, she said, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I smiled, my face tight, and cleared the table. The clatter of glasses a distraction. Ben was in the backyard, tidying the grill, the evening air cool and heavy with the scent of charcoal. I thought Luke had left, but as I loaded the dishwasher, he appeared, offering to help. I've got it, I said, my voice clipped, but he stayed, stacking plates with a quiet focus that felt to intimate. We need to talk, he said, finally, his voice low as the dishwasher hummed to life. I shook my head, wiping my hands on a towel, the cotton rough against my skin. There's nothing to say, I replied, but my heart was racing, and he stepped closer. The kitchen island, a flimsy barrier between us. Sarah, I'm not imagining this, he said, his eyes locked on mine, raw and unguarded. You feel it too. My breath caught, and I wanted to deny it, to scream that I was Ben's wife, but my silence was louder, a confession I hadn't meant to make. I didn't mean to let him see my heart, but I didn't hide it either. He suggested a drive, just to clear the air, and I don't know why I agreed. But soon we were in his car, the engine's low rumble filling the silence. The city lights blurred outside, and the leather seat was cool under my thighs, grounding me. As my pulse hammered, I don't want to hurt Ben. Luke set his hands tight on the wheel, the dashboard's glow casting shadows on his face. but I can't stop thinking about you. I twisted my bracelet, the charm digging into my wrist, and whispered, "This is wrong," but my voice lacked conviction, and when he parked by a quiet park, the streetlights dim, he reached for my hand. His touch was warm, electric, and I didn't pull away. We sat there, the car's clock ticking softly, until he leaned closer, his breath brushing my cheek. "Tell me to stop," he said, but I didn't, and the space between us vanished. Then my phone buzzed, Ben's name on the screen, a text, "Where are you?" I jerked back, my heart lurching, and fumbled for the door handle. "I need to go," I said, my voice shaky. But Luke's eyes held mine, a question lingering. Had Ben seen us leave together? Ben's text burned in my mind as I stumbled out of Luke's car, the night air sharp against my flushed skin. My bracelet jangled its star charm, catching the faint glow of a street light, a reminder of the line I'd nearly crossed again. The park was quiet, the distant hum of traffic barely audible. But inside me, everything was screaming. I'd told Luke to take me home, but the tension between us hadn't faded. It clung like damp clothes. How could I face Ben when I'd let his friend pull me into this? The shame was a weight pressing my chest until I could hardly breathe. I walked to the house, my sneakers scuffing the sidewalk, and slipped inside, hoping Ben was asleep. The living room was dark, the TV's blue glow flickering, but Ben was on the couch, his phone in hand. "Sarah, where were you?" he asked, his voice calm, but edged with worry. I froze, my bracelet suddenly heavy, and mumbled, "Just needed air, couldn't sleep." He nodded, but his eyes lingered like he sensed something off. I forced a smile, my heart pounding, and escaped to the kitchen, the tile cold under my feet. I was safer now. But the lie tasted bitter. The next day, Luke texted, "Meet me tonight. We can't leave it like this." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, and hated myself for hesitating. Ben was at work, and the house felt too big, too empty. Against every rational thought, I agreed to meet Luke at a hotel bar downtown, telling myself I'd end it, set boundaries. But when I saw him waiting, his jacket open, his smile soft in the dim light, my resolve crumbled. The bar was all polished wood and low jazz, the air thick with the scent of whiskey. We sat in a booth, my bracelet glinting as I sipped water, the glass slick with condensation. "You're not happy, Sarah," Luke said, leaning forward, his voice low, like a secret meant just for me. "I see it, you deserve more." His words hit hard, peeling back a truth I'd buried, that spark of wanting to feel alive again. I shook my head, but my throat tightened. "I'm married," I said, but it sounded weak, like I was convincing myself. He reached for my hand, his fingers warm, and I let him hold it, the touch igniting something I couldn't douse. We talked then, didn't, and somehow ended up in a room upstairs, the door clicking shut with a sound that felt final. The room was dim, the curtains heavy, and Luke's kisses were urgent. My bracelet catching on his shirt as I gave in. For those moments, I forgot. Ben, forgot myself, lost in a rush I hadn't felt in years. I didn't mean to open that door, but I walked through it anyway. When it was over, I lay there, the sheets cool, the AC's hum filling the silence. Luke was beside me, his breathing slow, but the guilt crashed in heavy and suffocating. I slipped out my bracelet, dangling, and caught a cab home, the city lights blurring through my tears. As I unlocked our door, I heard Ben's car pull in. Would he know just by looking at me? The front door clicked shut behind me, the sound sharp in the quiet house as Ben's car engine hummed outside. My bracelet hung loose on my wrist, its star charm glinting faintly in the hallway's dim light, a silent witness to the hotel room I'd just left. The guilt was a vice, squeezing my chest, until I could barely breathe, and I felt like a stranger in my own home. How could I stand here pretending to be Ben's wife when I'd let Luke's hands erase the promises I'd made? The shame was relentless, clawing at me as I kicked off my shoes, the hardwood cool under my bare feet. I hurried to the bathroom, locking the door, and leaned over the sink, the faucet dripping with a steady plink that matched my racing pulse. My reflection was harsh eyes, red hair, musk lips swollen from Luke's kisses. I splashed cold water on my face, the shock of it sharp but useless against the weight of what I'd done. I didn't mean to betray him, but I chose it, didn't I? The words echoed in my head, a confession to the mirror, and I gripped the counter, my bracelet scraping the porcelain, grounding me in the wreckage of my choices. Ben knocked softly. "Sarah, you okay?" His voice was warm, tired, and I flinched, my heart lurching like I'd been caught. Yeah, just washing up. I called, my voice brittle, praying he wouldn't hear the lie. He mumbled something about a late dinner and shuffled to the kitchen. The clatter of pans, a painful reminder of his trust. I dried my face, the towel rough against my skin, and forced myself to join him. He was heating leftovers, the microwave's hum filling the silence, and he smiled when he saw me. Rough night? He asked, setting a plate of pasta in front of me, the steam curling upward. I nodded, my throat tight, and picked at the food, each bite a struggle. The next day I moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding my phone. Where Luke's text sat unanswered. Mia stopped by, her usual brightness, a stark contrast to my fog, dropping off a book she'd borrowed. You look wiped, Sarah, she said, her brow furrowing as she hugged me. Her perfume light and citrusy. Everything okay? I forced a laugh, muttering about work stress, but her concern felt like a spotlight on my secret. By afternoon I escaped to the garden, kneeling in the dirt, the soil cool under my fingers as I pulled weeds. It was a small relief, the simple task reminding me of quieter days, planting herbs with Ben, but even that memory stung now. As dusk settled, Ben came home, his keys jingling as he dropped them on the counter. Luke's coming over tomorrow, he said casually, and my stomach dropped, my bracelet suddenly heavy. Thought we could grill. I nodded, my smile frozen, but inside I was spiraling. I couldn't keep this hidden. It was poisoning me. But telling Ben meant risking our marriage, our life. As he kissed my forehead, his touch gentle, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Luke again. Would I face him tomorrow or confess? Before he could pull me back in, the prospect of Luke coming over hung over me like a storm cloud, and the weight of my secret was crushing. My bracelet jangled on my wrist, its star charm catching the morning light streaming through the kitchen window, a quiet echo of the hotel room where I'd lost myself. Ben was humming as he prepped for the grill, his trust in me as steady as ever, but every note of his tune felt like a judgment. I'd always been honest with him about my fears, my dreams, but now I was hiding a betrayal that could shatter us. The fear of losing him was a cold knot in my chest, and I knew I couldn't face Luke without telling Ben the truth first. I found him in the backyard, wiping down the grill, the air sharp with the scent of lighter fluid and fresh-cut grass. His flannel shirt was rolled up, his hands steady, and the sight of him so familiar, so Ben made my throat tighten. I set my coffee mug on the patio table, the ceramic clinking softly, and took a breath. Ben, we need to talk, I said, my voice barely audible over the chirping birds. He turned, his smile fading as he saw my face. What's wrong, babe? He asked, stepping closer. His brow creased with worry. I twisted my bracelet, the charm digging into my skin, and forced the words out. I made a mistake. With Luke. His face went still like the air had been sucked out of the yard. I pushed on, my voice shaking. It was one night at a hotel. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. And I'm so sorry. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of a lawnmower. Ben's eyes darkened, his jaw tight, and he stepped back, his hands balling into fists. Luke, he said, his voice low, raw, my friend. How could you, Sarah? The hurt in his gaze was worse than anger. And I felt like I was shrinking, my confession a blade I'd turned on us both. I don't know, I admitted, tears burning my eyes. I was lost, but I love you, I always have. He turned away, staring at the fence, his shoulders rigid. I need space, he said finally, his voice flat, like he was holding himself together with effort. He grabbed his keys from the table and walked out the gate, slamming behind him. I sank onto a patio chair, the metal cold against my thighs, and clutched my bracelet, its chain warm from my skin. I'd told the truth, but it didn't feel like relief. It felt like I'd broken something irreparable. The grill sat unused, the light of fluid scent now sour in my nose. Luke was due in hours, and I didn't know if Ben would be back by then. What would I say when Luke walked through the door, acting like nothing had changed? The backyard was quiet after Ben left, the birds gone silent, the air heavy with the fading scent of lighter fluid. My bracelet rested in my palm, its star charm dull, without the sunlight, a faint echo of that barbecue night, when Luke's gaze first caught me. I'd told Ben the truth, and his hurt, those darkened eyes, that flat voice was a wound I'd inflicted. The house felt hollow, the patio chair cold beneath me, and I was left, sifting through the pieces of our life, wondering if I'd lost him for good. I wanted to fix this, to be the wife he deserved, But the shame lingered, a shadow I couldn't outrun. I stayed outside, my fingers tracing the bracelet's chain, until the sky turned dusky. The first stars pricking through. Inside the kitchen was untouched Ben's coffee mug, still on the counter, its handle chipped from years of use. I set the bracelet beside it, the soft clink, loud in the stillness, and tried to imagine facing Luke. He arrived an hour later, knocking lightly, his silhouette filling the doorway. "Sarah," he called, his voice tentative, like he sensed the shift. I let him in, my movements mechanical, and he paused, his eyes searching mine. "Where's Ben?" he asked. Setting a six-pack on the counter, the bottles clinking, I told him, I said, my voice steady, despite the ache in my chest. "About us, about the hotel." Luke's face fell, his easy charm gone, replaced by something raw, regret maybe, or fear. "God, Sarah," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want this." I shook my head, my throat tight. "Neither did I, but it happened." He stepped closer, his hand reaching out, but I backed away, the counter between us. "It's over, Luke," I said, and the words felt like a release, heavy but final. He nodded, his jaw tight, and left without another word, the door clicking shut behind him. Ben came home past midnight, his eyes tired but softer, like he'd wrestled with his anger and found something else. We sat in the living room, the fan humming above, and talked about trust, about pain, about whether we could rebuild. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. I stopped wearing the bracelet, tucking it away, but its weight stays with me, a reminder of what I risked. Luke moved out of town, and Mia's still around, her laughter a bittersweet echo of easier nights. Ben and I are trying, day by day, some moments warm, others fragile like glass we're learning to handle. The bracelet's in a drawer now, but I see it in my mind, glinting on that porch, catching Luke's eye. "I told you this because I had to, because the truth was too heavy to carry alone. If you've ever made a mistake that broke someone you love, or wanted something you couldn't keep, I'm here listening. I'm not perfect, but I'm still standing, hoping. Leave what you must." I already did.